Hello and welcome. This is the third episode of Kaleidoscope, and I'm Dr. Mary Botticelli Christensen. Our guest today is Kate Donaghue, our state representative, and we're going on a field trip to the state capitol. See you there. You mentioned that looking at this staircase really gives you a feeling of your mission, but I know it has a lot more story to that. Can you give us a little bit about that?
Well, my great-grandfather was a state rep representing part of Boston, and I grew up hearing stories about my great-grandfather and his union work. Later in life, I learned more about his legislative work. So when I walk around this building, I think this is where my great-grandfather served. This is where I'm carrying out his legacy. This is a 225-year-old building, and I think of all of the people who have served here. I'm the 224th woman elected to as a representative. More than 20,000 men, but 224 women. It's kind of amazing when you think about that. And it's just, it's a privilege to serve the people of the district, and I'm the first woman living in Westboro to represent Westboro. It's very historic. It's I think more a reflection of the district, because prior to me, 3 women represented Westboro, but none of them were from Westboro.
Oh, I see. Well, I do remember you gave a talk to at the speech contest from the Lions Club, and one of the things that you talked about was service and serving to the people of your district. And so your legacy, hopefully, from your great-grandfather down through you and to those young people, will inspire the next generation of people from Westboro to go out and take the risk and come and do all that you have to do to get elected.
Well, you mentioned the contest. Mm-hmm. One of the young men at the contest was very excited to meet the rep when I was there, and we've continued to stay in touch. And yesterday he went out volunteering with me.
Oh, wonderful.
And he came to a civic meeting last night. So that speech contest did give him the connection into who his state rep was, and now we're working together.
Oh,
and I
how
credit
wonderful that is.
It's kind
how
of exciting.
Wonderful. Thank you. Now let's go on to see what else we can see in this beautiful place.
So in here we've got the Hall of Flags. One of the things that we do here is we have a lot of temporary exhibits that highlight different things. So it's a real resource to the whole state. Mm-hmm. To talk about some of the work that's been done and some of the history. And here I am looking up at the stained glass windows. It's a really impressive place. And then again, just looking at the staircases here, it's Nurses Hall, commemorating the nurses. And again, one of those absolutely gorgeous ceilings. I look at the murals, and as I said, it's a building that covers 2 city blocks, is 225 years old, and has a street running through it. I don't know if you had a chance to see this before, but this says "To the Army Nurses," and it's just exciting to be here. It never gets old. Every day when I walk in and I see the Golden Dome, I think I get to work here every day, every single day.
And you're serving, and yet it still fills you with emotion. So it
does.
Reciprocal.
Today, just on the way here, in the car, I called a couple of constituents who have had different things going on where I've been able to help connect them to state services, help them navigate some of the challenges that that people have. When people ask me how I like being a state rep, I sometimes say, I learn something new every day, and on a good day, I get to help someone.
Oh,
Should we go to Dora
Yes.
Call? So this is Dora Call, and this is where the public tours start from. So this is one of the historic places, but where we don't actually do much business here. So John Hancock. But you and I talked about the fact that I was a member of the Electoral College. This is where the electors assembled before we went into the House of Representatives. And, as you were saying, a lot of people don't realize that the Electoral College are real people. It's not just numbers, and every state does it a little differently. But here in Massachusetts, it's actually the Democratic State Committee that elects, more technically, the Democratic slate. When you vote for the Democratic nominee for president, you're essentially voting for these 11 people who are members. So I got elected as a member of the Electoral College by the people, but it was the Democratic State Committee members that chose me to be part of that slate. I campaigned for it, and I was one of the longer serving. I was one of the people with the most activism, so I was elected by those 11 people to be what we call president of the Electoral College. So I presided over the actual casting of the votes in December of 2020 for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
and this took place in this room.
Well, no, we assembled in this room.
Yeah, and then you went
And then
to-
we went to the grand staircase where we got a group picture, and then we went to the floor of the House of Representatives where the voting actually happened.
And that happens on the other side too, with the Republican Party, that they do the
well,
same way?
Yes. So it actually, yes and no.
Oh.
So in each state, almost every state is winner take all.
Mm-hmm.
So if the Republicans choose their slate, and then if they voted for a Republican, then the Republican slate would have won.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So in each state, only one group,
I get it.
only one group casts votes, and it's either the Democrats or the Republicans.
Right,
So
whoever won.
in
Yeah.
Massachusetts, so when people get elected by the Democratic State Committee to be an elector, they say that people will sometimes say, "Oh, I'm an elector." And I don't like to correct people, but sometimes I think, no, you're not an elector. You're not an elector till till the vote is actually cast.
I understand. So tell us a little bit about what brought you to this place. Your past, we talked a little bit about your great-grandfather, but what else brought you to this point where we're standing in front of this?
As a legislator. Well, I was active in politics with my dad as a child through high school. In college and as a young adult, I kind of moved away from being political. And I was very active when I was in college and out of college in the hiking and then environmental movement.
Mm-hmm.
One of the proudest volunteer activities of my life is the Long Trail Protection Fund. I got involved in protecting the northern part of the Long Trail. The Long Trail is the country's oldest long-distance hiking trail that goes from the Massachusetts state line to the Canadian border. And I was involved in an effort that's protected more than 25,000 acres of land that's now in permanent public protection because of an effort I was very involved in. As I was working on that effort, we worked extensively with the legislature in Vermont, and I saw the great value of public-private cooperation.
Wow.
And around that time, an opening came up on the Democratic State Committee, and I made an intentional decision to shift my volunteer time from the environmental land protection effort to the political effort, the things that I cared most about: education, healthcare, what you might call social justice. I said, you really need government to do that. The nonprofits have an awesome role, but for so many things, you really need to be part of government. So I got involved in electoral politics, getting people elected. Never thought that I'd run for office. I was living primarily in a place where, for the past 20 years, I think, the district was 2 precincts of Westboro and 11 precincts of Shrewsbury. So obviously somebody from Shrewsbury was going to win. And then the most recent round of redistricting put Westboro as the single biggest voting block in a district. And I was sort of the natural candidate to run. Unfortunately, my husband was terminally ill at the time, and I was saying, I'm not running, I'm not running, I'm not running. And then 4 weeks after they told him he had 6 months to live, he was gone. And a week after we buried him, I started planning my run for state rep. And I ran so that I could be a voice for the people of the district. And the issues that I primarily ran on were health care, especially caring for our seniors as we age. I am a senior citizen, proudly the oldest first-term legislator. And additionally, I was substance use disorder. As I think you know, I lost my son, my only child, to an overdose.
I'm so sorry.
It's, as I talked to people, I saw it happening to so many people. I just, it's what I talk about. I talk about the other issues that I ran on were education and health care. And when I went door to door, I would talk about those 3 things. But what people remembered was substance use disorder, because child loss
Yes, it's all of us.
is
Terrified about it.
it's what people remember. And so it's not even necessarily my highest priority, but it's where my voice is strongest.
Now, when you were elected, when you came to the State House on your first day, what were you provided as training, as learning the difference between a bill and a law? Because you were a brand new person coming in. What was that like?
Well, the very first thing that happens is, even before you're sworn in, there's, I think the official name is Legislative Academy, but we actually kind of call it Rep Camp. So we go out to Rep Camp, and the University of Massachusetts hosts us.
Oh.
And we get to stay at UMass at the campus hotel for a couple of days. So we have 3 days of training and 2 nights where you get to meet your classmates, you get to meet some of the other legislators, and that's where you learn about how things are done. We had briefings on statewide issues. We were trained on how session is conducted. So, for example, if you were a rep and I was a rep, I couldn't say, Mary Christensen, I disagree with Mary Christensen. I couldn't even say I disagree with Representative Christensen. It would be the gentle lady from Westboro.
Oh.
It's the gentleman from Boston, the gentle lady from Westboro is how we refer to each other on the House floor.
Because we relinquish our personality and yourselves when you go in, and it's respectful.
It's respectful, and it makes it less argumentative. And the gentle lady, the gentleman. So after rep camp, where we learn a lot, then we come to the State House the very first day, where we're always sworn in on the first Wednesday of February, even if it's New Year's Day.
Oh.
And it's actually a legislative session. We conduct business on that first day when we're sworn in. and everybody's sworn in every 2 years. You don't just take the oath as a new legislator. All of you take the oath, and among the very first votes we take is for the Speaker of the House. And the first day is largely a celebratory day. Then the second day is when the governor and the lieutenant governor are sworn in, and they're sworn in the House chamber. And so much of the second day, always a Thursday, is celebratory. But Thursday afternoon was when the work began, so to speak. Thursday afternoon, we were issued laptops and things like that, and given access to the software that we use to actually file legislation. And then Friday is sort of your first real work day. And then 2 weeks later, you need to have your bills filed for that legislative session.
2 weeks after you start?
Yeah, like 2 weeks and a couple of days. So swearing in days on Wednesday, and then 2.5 weeks later is that Friday when you generally file your legislation for the first session. So in the first session, every legislator has a different approach, but generally, as a first-term legislator, you are, supporting other people's work. So you file a bill or you co-file a bill. So you only have no more than 2 people in either chamber filing a bill. So most of the bills that I filed were either supporting the work of other legislators, where I was co-filing on issues that are important. So, for example, one of the issues that I worked on was, more access to insurance and naloxone, bills that I had worked on before I was sworn in, and now I had the opportunity to be the co-filer. For example, one of the bills that I worked on was trying to get naloxone or Narcan, 2 doses of Narcan given to every person who's leaving a rehab facility. So Narcan is in the hands of people who need it. And so that was one of the bills that I had worked on as an advocate, and now I'm working on it as a co-filer. And so separate from filing or co-filing, one of the, you can also co-sponsor a bill. And there are 200 legislators, and you can probably find 200 different approaches to how people decide what they're going to co-sponsor. So after the filing deadline in late January, then the powers that be go through all the legislation that's filed and assigned it to a committee. I'm assigned to, and I also was given my committee assignments. So the committees that I serve on are mental health, substance use, and recovery. That's one committee. I serve on the education committee, I serve on public service, and I serve on consumer protection and professional licensure. So during January, February, and March, they go through the bills and they assign them to different committees. And then the committees hold hearings. So in Massachusetts, every timely filed bill is guaranteed a hearing. Timely filed is when you file it by that legislation on that by that deadline on that Friday in January.
And who's invited to the hearing?
Everybody. The public's invited to the hearing. Anybody can testify at a hearing, and every single bill gets a hearing. So, and you can testify. Each committee has different rules, but 3 minutes is kind of the standard. Everybody gets their 3 minutes at a hearing. And pre-pandemic, the only way to testify was to come into the building. And now that post-pandemic, all our meetings are hybrid. So for example, on consumer protection, one of the bills we heard had to do with getting wheelchairs repaired in a timely manner. And we heard from people all over the state, severely handicapped people, who the wheelchair is their lifeline. And these were people who wouldn't be able to testify otherwise. Prior to the pandemic, people would come in and they'd wait hours to have their 3 minutes, paying $40, $50, $60 just to park. And now it's much more accessible. And all of the hearings are now hybrid, and you can view them on your own time. So sometimes two committees that I might be on might have hearings at the same time. And this allows me to watch the other hearing at night, even if I wasn't able to be there.
So from start to end, you start writing that bill, then it went to a committee, then it went for the hearings. Is that like 5 months?
Yeah, it is. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had what we call Joint Rule 10 Day. And if you were on Facebook with Real Political Junkies, they're saying Happy Joint Rule 10 Day. And there are some exceptions, but essentially on Joint Rule 10 Day, every bill is either reported favorably by the committee, it's sent to study, or it's voted should not pass. So if a bill is reported favorably, then it lives on. A lot of bills get reported favorably out of committee that don't then get to the floor of the House. But that's the first step. So
And to see some of those issues that are so close to your heart and had worked on, and now you've gotten here, and then it'll move on to eventually either become a law or not.
Essentially,
Yes.
it's kind of binary. Either
Yeah.
it either becomes a law or it doesn't. But sometimes pieces are incorporated into others. One of the bills that I filed had to do with getting rid of archaic laws, like laws mandating prayer in schools. When I testified on that, I was looking around the room and I was saying that I was of the age when the Supreme Court ruled that prayer in public schools wasn't allowed. And I remember doing daily prayer in school, but most of the people in that room didn't. And we just want to update some of these archaic laws.
Right. Well, the satisfaction of starting as a volunteer, doing good work, to going through that whole process of getting elected, what is the end result? You've been here now 2 years?
No.
No, 1 year.
I've been here about 13 months.
13 months.
This is
How
my
long
14th
is
month.
your tenure?
It's a 2-year term. So 2 weeks ago today, the papers were released, that nomination papers. So now, these past 2 weeks, the campaign begins again.
Oh my, so you're doing the work and you're campaigning.
Yes, so I have to collect the signatures. You asked earlier about how you pay for these things. I was in a position where I was retired when I ran for office, so I was able to campaign full-time for about 10 months.
We can wait. Look at that trophy. Oh, I love kids.
Yeah, we get a lot of sports teams that come in and want to be recognized. So, so the formula for getting elected that I'd heard as a volunteer was raise as much money as you can, as early as you can, and then knock on as many doors as you can. And at the state rep level, that is a really good formula for getting elected. So I spent the first month largely spending as much time as I could calling people, asking for donations. And I was able to raise a significant amount of money in the first month that I was running. Some people would say, oh, wow, look at how much money you raised in just a month, in 4 weeks. And I would tell them 4 weeks and 40 years.
Yes.
That I had spent a lifetime of helping other people get elected. And people were very ready to
Support
be generous to me.
How nice. Now, your campaigning is actually how you and I met. I met you at a restaurant just by happenstance. Then one day I opened the door to my house and you were knocking on doors, and I got to meet you again. And I went to an event recently that you hosted. So it was such a wonderful, capricious way to meet someone who was dedicated to many of the same things that I'm dedicated to. So I want you to tell me, if you had to put into words, in only a couple of words, what does this being a state representative is for you in 2 words?
Rewarding and challenging.
Okay, and so what's the most challenging part?
The most challenging is trying to help people when you're not necessarily able to help them. Life is very challenging today in Massachusetts with rising costs. I hear about housing challenges everywhere. And there are many programs that help people, but we're facing not just a housing crisis, but a housing emergency right now. And when somebody calls me and says, I need housing, which is such a basic human need, and they're just, for whatever reason, there's not something that suits what they need to do. And that's
And rewarding?
Rewarding is when you're able to help someone cut through some red tape, when somebody's trying to get something done and you're able to help them. So, for example, I had somebody who, her brother was at the Worcester County House of Correction, and she was having trouble with him reaching her by phone. And she'd been trying to figure out what was wrong with the account. It looked like there was money in it. She had put at the time. That's one of the things that's rewarding is now our incarcerated people can make no-cost calls. But that's a very new bill that I supported. But at the time, I helped her cut through the red tape, and what she'd been trying to get done for a month, I was able to help her with in 10 minutes.
Well, I think Shakespeare had you in mind when he said, though she be small, she be fierce. Thank you so much for all you do. It's just truly amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And for the lovely tour
Oh, you're welcome.
of our house.